episode number 211 with my good friend. And he's my good friend because he's not somebody that I only know from Facebook. We've actually met each other from time to time. And I think it was in Tallahassee. No, it was in Jacksonville. But Bo is going to clear up all of that for me, because as he just told me, the memory is the second thing that starts to go when you get old. So, Bo Jackson, welcome to the Jeet Kune Dialogues.
Thanks for having me.
So first things first, I got to tell you this. I think it was probably the first time that I met you. I immediately thought of Larry Hartzell.
I get that a lot.
Do you really?
I do. It's funny you say that. Probably for the first, I don't know, maybe 2 years that I trained with Vic, he called me Larry on a regular basis.
No.
And it literally took a while for me to figure it out that he was not referring to me as one of the Three Stooges.
Okay.
Not even kidding.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So now people are not going to know who we mean by Vic. So go ahead and tell them who Victor Ferreros is and where he.
Okay. So my instructor is Victor Ferreros, Sifu Victor Ferreros. He started training with Sifu Dan back in 1983.
Okay.
So long time in a Santo guy. Spent a lot of time with Sifu Dan through the years. Spent a lot of time with Sifu Larry as well.
Mm-hmm.
And they were pretty good friends.
Yeah, I think I wait. Are you hearing an echo?
No.
Yeah, I'm hearing myself repeated. You don't have a headset, do you?
I'm wearing one.
You are wearing one?
Yeah, I mean, I've got this guy.
All right, let me see if I hear it again. All right, now it's gone. Okay. All right. So I was saying, I think I met Vic in Palm Beach, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Was he always in Tallahassee, or was he in Palm Beach at one point?
No. He moved here in 2004.
Okay.
No. Well, Sifu Vic's been all over. I mean, right. he was in Alaska for a time. He's kind of been he's like Johnny Cash, kind of been everywhere.
Yeah, I think and I'm pretty sure that when I was hosting Sifu Nasano here in Miami, that he came down a number of times for that as well, because I've known Sifu Victor for a long time. Okay, so people have always thought that you're Larry Hartzell. And Larry Hartzell has a military and a Kempo background. Do you happen to share that with him?
The military, no. The Kempo, yes.
Okay. Do people tell you that you look like a military guy?
Sure. It's the haircut. But I'm a utility worker. I work outside, so yeah, I got rid of long hair a long time ago. I haven't had long hair since the mullet was popular the first time.
All right, and the Kempo, but the Kempo karate is something you have in common.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my background is, well, let's see, I got to go all the way back to, the olden days. First martial art I trained was Eagle Claw Kung Fu for a summer when I was like 11 years old. Mm-hmm. The guy who was the instructor was a Malaysian guy, and he moved on after the summer, and I wanted to take martial arts. And at the time, I wanted to take judo, but my parents couldn't afford to pay for martial arts lessons. So my aunt, my dad's sister, she had several grandchildren from her husband, because she was his second wife. So they had grandkids, and all of the grandkids were taking taekwondo. And so she wanted me to take taekwondo. And I really, honestly, even though I wanted to take judo, could have cared less. Long story short, she would pay for the taekwondo. So I ended up taking taekwondo, did that for years, did a little wrestling in high school. When my taekwondo instructor left Tallahassee and moved to Miami, I took up traditional Shorin-ryu karate with a guy who was he ended up closing his school because his wife got ill, and so he had to spend a whole lot of time and wasn't able to
Mhm.
maintain the school and all that. So kind of a tragic
Mhm.
story there. After that, I got into Kempo and did Kempo for I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years under a guy by the name of Professor Jerry Engel. That was a
Okay.
Shaolin Kempo. It was a Serio, big Serio lineage Kempo.
Up in Syria's up in New York, right?
Yeah, this he was
Mhm.
actually it was a couple of his guys because it was called the Masters Self Defense Centers. It was a guy named Professor Bob Nolte, who was an eighth Dan under Serio and George Basari, and they founded their own kind of little thing there, but they were
Right.
based out of Boston.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they would Professor Nolte would come down and do seminars pretty regular
Yeah.
from Boston.
Small world. I met Sirio at an Inasano seminar in New York.
Oh wow.
One, yeah, one time. And you said your Taekwondo instructor moved to Miami. Who was that?
A guy by the name of Jung Kyun Suh.
That one I'm not. That name I'm not familiar with.
He's
But,
down there in South Florida, has been since. You got to remember, this is going back a minute. I mean,
mhm.
because he left Tallahassee and moved down there in '91, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
So you got to go way back.
Well, in '91, I'd been in Miami for 5 years, I think. So, and in fact, the before I moved to Miami, when I would come up to Miami to visit,
Mhm,
and I met some people up here, and so I actually spent some time with some Taekwondo people, and then when I moved to Miami, a bunch of their black belts were actually the first students that I had.
okay.
Right? Yeah, yeah. So I had been to their school, and like when they had their black belt tests, I was there. So I saw a bunch of the Taekwondo masters from South Florida at the time.
Mhm.
So okay, so Kempo, and then what led you to Sifu Victor?
Oh, well, you've heard this story, but I'll tell it again. Um, so I went through a divorce. Couldn't afford to do martial arts at the time, obviously, because I was broke. Anyway, long story short, I got into a work accident. Ended up breaking my L4 and L5 vertebrae, and so I was laid up for a little while, and so I thought I was done with martial arts for good. Well, that turned out
Right.
not to be the case. Um, Started feeling a little better. Eventually got most of my mobility back, and then say fast forward, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. Um, Looked at myself in the mirror one day and said, I got to do something. And so I
Hmm.
joined a gym. My immediate thought wasn't go back to the martial arts because when I had trained before, it was really hard on my body because I was a young guy. I mean, we're talking
Right.
25, 26-year-old guy. So sparring, rolling, all of that stuff, I was very heavy into that. And I just knew how abusive it could be towards my body and everything.
Hmm.
And so I joined a gym and was working out. And so I'm at the gym one day and I was getting back into relatively good shape. And I see a guy in the gym working on a machine and he's got on a t-shirt and it's an Inasanto Academy t-shirt. And I recognized the name Inasanto.
Uh-huh.
And so I approached this guy sitting at, doing his workout. And basically I invade this guy's space and I said, I like your t-shirt. And he just kind of looks at me and goes, "Thanks." And I said, "So, what do you know about Dan and Asanto?" And he looked at me and he goes, "What do you know about Dan and Asanto?"
That's not surprising that that was his response.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, yeah.
so I told him what I knew about Dan and Asanto, and then he gave me a little background and said that he had a group here locally, and I had always been a fan of Bruce Lee. I wore out my copy of the Tao of JK, Tao of Jeet Kune Do, and
Mhm.
I've got a new updated version of it now. But I had worn that out years ago, and so I knew a little bit about Bruce Lee, and I knew a little bit about Jeet Kune Do, and I kind of thought I knew something about it. And so he
Right.
said, "Well, yeah, I do classes at one of the parks here locally." and he invited me to come out to a park, and I had no idea that there was, you know, Kali, FMA, any of that stuff also, you know. So
Right.
that was kind of a shock for me right off the bat, because I had done a little bit of modern Arnis back when I was doing Kempo, because Remy Presses was pretty well tied into the Kempo
Okay.
groups, most of
Uh-huh.
them anyway.
Right.
And so I had done a little bit of that, but it had been years. You know, I hadn't touched a stick in years. And so I found out he was doing FMA, so I started doing that. But the the big thing with Sifu Vic was Wednesday nights we would meet at one of the local rec centers,
Right.
and we would do JKD on Wednesdays, and that was our thing. And I'm still doing it on Wednesday, every Wednesday. The fun about it is you do your broadcast Wednesdays, and normally I would be in class training with Sifu Vic on Wednesdays.
Right.
During that time, our classes start at 6, but because of the weather and because of just scheduling and all that, he's recently changed it. So now we're meeting at 4 on Wednesdays. So I'm done with class and I'm able to catch the Wednesday broadcast
Ah,
again. So
nice.
it's
Nice.
kind of cool.
And you, and if I read the schedule correctly, you teach the Kali Mondays and Wednesdays, and JKD Tuesdays and Thursdays, or something like that.
No, if you're going off of the website for Tima, that
Yeah.
website's currently under reconstruction.
Okay.
So let me tell you about Tima, the group that I teach for. We are a registered 501c3 community outreach organization, a nonprofit.
Okay.
So it means I don't get paid to teach. None of us do. So I teach FMA on Tuesdays and Saturdays. I teach JKD on Thursdays only now.
Okay.
And I teach small classes. Right now, I currently have 5 JKD students.
Mm-hmm.
And I prefer it that way. I
Mm-hmm.
really, really, really prefer any more 3 to 5 guys. It's just any more than that, it kind of becomes more difficult to teach. I kind of get where Bruce was going with all of that. So
Really? Yeah, see, that's interesting, because when you were telling me the earlier stories about your instructors and their schools and not being able to keep the schools and what have you, it flashed in my mind to ask you if you ever thought about owning like your own school or something, but I guess not, huh?
I never thought about teaching, to be honest with you. I mean,
Ah,
honestly, I was just there to, I was there to learn. And
right.
it was more or less Sifu Vic that kind of encouraged me in that direction,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a kind of an interesting story. So at the time, both of the time I started teaching, both of my kids and myself were involved with a local group called Judo for Jesus, a judo organization here in town.
Mm-hmm.
Great group of guys, and they're based out of one of the local churches. Um, and they wanted to do like a women's self-defense thing, and they were doing some pad work, and I was more or less just sitting there watching the kids do their thing, and I kind of took pity on them working the focus mitts, and the instructors, the judo guys were kind of, I'm not going to say not interested, but just they were kind of focused on other things, but the
Right.
ladies really seemed to enjoy hitting the pads. So I got up off my butt and got out there and held pads for them, and did that a couple of times. And Sensei Danny James, the guy who runs the program for those guys, was like, "Would you consider doing like a teaching thing, like teaching a women's self defense thing, and like on a regular?" Because I was going to be there anyway. I mean, my kids
Yeah.
were there. And I
Right.
said, "Sure," and it kind of went from there. How I hooked up with Tima was I was in Jacksonville at one of Seafood Dan's seminars at the old boxing gym. Remember
Oh,
the old
yeah.
guns and hoses gym?
Uh-huh.
Did spent a lot of time at that place. I was
Yeah.
I was I was I was I was fairly happy when Jay Mateo started hosting it at his boxing gym. It was a
Okay.
nicer facility anyway. But there was a guy there named Steve who owned a local martial arts place here in Tallahassee called Arsenal, and he asked me if I would be interested in coming and teaching at his school. Now, this would have been like a paid gig. So I was like, okay, sure. So I asked, Sifu Vic if he thought it'd be a good idea. And he said, oh, yeah, you should totally go do that. So that was when I started teaching on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that at that point, I'm really starting to kind of, I'm not going to say get in a tight with my wife, but at that point I had gone from training on Saturdays, Sundays, and Wednesdays to now training Saturdays, Sundays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So, so now it was a 5-day a week thing, and it's still a 5-day a week thing for the most part.
Yeah.
But no, she's been really good about it. So, but that's how it started. And when Steve's father got ill, he ended up selling that place. And so we lost our building, and this was right about the time COVID hit. So we actually just moved into a new location, but we decided to kind of keep the thing together because, we had a good thing. I knew the Kempo guys. I'd gotten to know them really well, working with them for a couple of years. A couple of the instructors are FMA students under me. I teach, they've been taking FMA under me for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
And, we just decided to keep everything together. And that was where the idea of, doing it as a nonprofit kind of came to be, because it didn't want to stop training. So for us, It was, let's do this, and we'll do it as a way to kind of help out the community if we can. But at the same time, it's a little selfish too. It was just basically to keep training, to kind of keep everything going. So
yeah, well, I mean, so it's the proverbial labor of love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's a great group of people. I mean, it really is. Those guys, I mean, they get it. And we have tons of fun.
Do you think that running a what people would call a commercial school, what I call a professional school, do you think, because I had this I think this came up in the discussion with GN a couple of weeks ago. Do you think that if you run a full-time school and you get paid for teaching, that you are automatically going to start compromising?
I don't know about that. I know that it's stressful enough running a nonprofit school. I can only imagine how stressful it would be to run a for-profit school. So yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe you would compromise, but I think it's really more one of those things where you kind of have to know where which side of the bread your butter's on. I mean, the kids are where you're going to make money with a school. I mean, that's just a fact. Even as a nonprofit, if we didn't have a kids program, which I don't teach kids, but our Kempo guys teach kids. They have pretty good kids program. But honestly, that's where your money's going to come from. So I mean, I could see where you may compromise a little bit, but I would think we have a couple of schools here in town that are, I'm not going to say paper mills, but they kind of are. It's all, you can tell that that's really all. They're constantly charging, you've got to do your belt promotion every, 3 months. You're going to pay for that. And it just, I could see where somebody would think that you could be compromised, but no, we don't do that. No, we don't do that at all. That's why I said I really like the group that I'm involved with now.
Yeah.
And it's a good bunch.
We
all get along, which is pretty rare considering we're all different styles.
I just thought of this. I don't imagine the name Bo is on your birth certificate, right?
Yeah.
It is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 4 names. I'm not going to tell you the first 2.
No. My next question was gonna be, okay, so who are the people, or what kind of people know your name? Like,
my family.
Okay.
My family. Seriously, my family, maybe a couple of my coworkers, but no. My first name is Corbett. Corbett. Corbett.
Okay.
My middle name is Kelly. Then Jackson. Kelly was my father.
Okay.
Okay. So having two Kellys in the same house would not work. And
Right.
I absolutely hated the name Corbett. So it was Bo.
Okay.
And so that's how it's been, how it's always been. I mean, if you can imagine what it was like being a very skinny, short, Coke bottle glass wearing white kid
Yeah.
on an all black school bus in 1985
Ah.
named Bo Jackson.
but okay, right.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay, so see, I was going somewhere with this, but now you just took me off my path, right? How? Well, see, here's the thing: you have to be of a certain age to even get that reference. I think,
Oh, absolutely.
right? You have to
Yeah.
be of a certain age. But my bigger question is this: how? Because I find it so intriguing that there's you, the Coke bottle wearing, skinny,
Hmm.
short, with the name Bo Jackson,
Hmm.
and you're being interviewed by me. How in
Uh,
heaven's name did either of us end up in on this Jeet Kune thing, influenced by people like Bruce Lee and Dan Inosanto? How did
I
that
don't know.
happen?
It's crazy.
Yeah,
It really is. I mean,
yeah.
because yeah, looking back on it, I mean, I've seen some pictures of you when you were young, and I was the same way. Think about this, okay? When I was a junior in high school and I wrestled, I was 5'11", and I walked around at 135 pounds.
Okay,
I'd have to cut weight below 129 to wrestle.
okay,
I was that big around. My
man.
mother had to find 28, 34 jeans for me to wear. You know how hard it
Uh-huh.
is to find a 20, and I had to wear belt marks to keep them on. Dwight, I walk
Right.
around at 240 right now.
So there's hope for me then. I might grow up to be I might grow up to be an adult one of these days.
Maybe, I don't know.
Right?
I think being an adult is overrated.
Nah. All right. So we we had an interaction on Facebook a little while ago, and I mentioned to you that you are the only person who do you know you I don't know if you remember this, but I mentioned to you that you're the only person who I have ever heard something say something close to something that I teach. And
Uh,
it had to do with what I think the guy who posted it, now I can't remember the original post, but I remember you said that one way of dealing with the attack is to take the hit.
mhm.
Do you remember the post? And then you went down the list of other ways of counterattacking or what have you. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not sure. I thought it was the one about using footwork,
Um,
about using
but,
footwork to steal time.
um, maybe it was really, I should have looked it up, but I
Because
can't.
the reason I say that is because for some reason I had saved this.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it was about the importance of teaching footwork.
Okay.
And the comment that I made was, so I teach footwork as a warm up every class.
Right.
However, most classes I tend to include one or two of the footwork patterns covered in the warm up as part of the drills covered in the lesson. This makes the
Hmm.
drill more alive and not static. I'll try to describe an example from class last week. We focused on the lead advanced footwork to counter a lateral step made by the opponent. Executed properly, the lead advance closes the distance to the opponent from outside of range to within range and can steal a half beat of time. Done properly, it can open up and allow control of the center line while simultaneously cutting off the attempted evasion of the sidestep. I think that's what you were talking about. Maybe.
No, it's not
No?
that one. It's one where you said
Uh-huh.
you said, well, the first way, something like, I'll paraphrase. You said something like the first way is getting hit.
Well,
And then
there's 4 methods of defense that I teach.
right. This is okay. So now, all right. So elaborate on that.
First method, take the hit. And I didn't come up with this. This is actually something I stole from Eric Paulson.
Okay.
From Sensei Eric. So first way, take the hit. It's not the greatest defense in the world. It's really not. I mean, but you know, if you're covered up good and they're hitting you in the hands or hitting you in the arms or whatever, it's not the end of the world. Second way, to avoid the hit, head movement, body movement, you know, footwork. Third way, to either parry or block the hit. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I would also include catching in that as well, because you can parry, block, or catch. And then the
Right.
fourth way is to intercept or stop the hit.
Right.
Those are your 4 methods of defense.
Okay.
And I don't really call them 4 methods of defense. I really call it defense with counter offense added into it at the end. So
right. Okay.
but
And you say you stole that from Eric Paulson?
I'm pretty sure that's who I got. I try to give credit to everybody, you know, especially if it's something that I'm positive I didn't just dream up in my own head.
Yeah.
That's the problem with training with a bunch of people over the years, because you know I have trained with some really good folks.
Well, I know for sure that I stole it from Chris Kent and Tim Tackett.
Maybe that's where Eric got it from. Who knows? I mean,
right.
I know that I personally didn't come up with that, but that is the way that I teach it. I teach it as, you know, we have 5 primary ways of attack, and I call them primary. I don't call them the 5 ways of attack, because there's really more than 5. But I try to break everything that I teach, especially when it comes to JKD, into groups of 3, 4, or 5, and no more than that. And there's a reason behind that, because you know JKD is supposed to be simple, right? It's supposed to be what is simple, direct, and non-classical. That's your big 3, I guess.
Yeah.
I always add 2 more to that. So whenever I teach it, yes, it should be simple. Yes, it should be direct. It should be non-classical. But I also add that it should be effective, which some people toss that in place of non-classical.
Right.
And then I also say that it should be repeatable. Those are my 5. So when I say there's 5 primary, I guess you could call them like axioms or whatever for JKD, it's always that JKD, or when I say what JKD is, it should be simple, direct, non-classical, effective, and repeatable.
Yeah. Well, okay. But see, now with a name like Bo Jackson, right, you can do whatever you want. Because
I'm a pretty good sized guy. I can pretty much do whatever I want anyway. So.
Right. Because what you've done there is you've actually taken liberties with what's written by exactly.
If we want to dive into the politics, I got some good stuff for you.
Okay. You've actually had the eggs to state things differently. You know, to actually add on to the 3 adjectives that are usually used, right, to denote what Jeet Kune must be.
But
right.
Understand, I also emphasize to my students that this is my interpretation. I'm not Bruce Lee. That's the first thing I tell anybody who comes to my JKD class. I'm like, in case you didn't notice, I'm not Bruce Lee. I mean, last time I checked, Bruce Lee was a, you know, shorter guy of Asian descent, and not this.
Yeah. You'd never pass for his twin, and you couldn't play him. You couldn't play him. You couldn't play him in a Halloween costume.
Apparently, I do a pretty good job of Sifu Larry Hartsell, but not Bruce Lee. No.
Well,
and the Sifu Larry thing is appearance only. I wish I could move like that guy.
I think I saw it here. Do you know Michael Marcellus Brown? Do you know who that is? From North Carolina?
I know him through Facebook.
Okay. If he says that you look like Larry Hartsell, You do.
It's fun. I go to Jacksonville. Well, I used to back before the whole COVID thing just kind of kicked everybody in the pants as far as seminars go.
Mhm.
We used to go to Jacksonville every year. That was me and Sifu Vic and our group. We always made the trek over to Jacksonville to do the seminar there.
Right.
But I also was going to Atlanta to Sifu
Mhm.
Falls for the Train with the Masters. I was doing that twice a year as well. So,
Okay.
and it's funny. Invariably, I'll bump into somebody that I've never met before, and that's usually one of the first things that they say. Does anybody ever told you you look like Larry Hartsell? And it's the mustache or the short hair or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it
I consider it a compliment. I mean,
it is, and yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot to it.
Sifu Vic has always spoken so highly of Sifu Larry and what a great guy he was
Yeah,
and all of that. So,
yeah.
you know.
Um, so the teaching insights,
Mhm.
how do you cultivate that? Like where does that teaching ability come from?
Um, Actually, I don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, I had no idea, and I still don't know if I'm good at it or not. I mean, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. I mean, some of my students are fairly loyal. I've got guys that have been with me for several years now, and they're all great guys. I mean, I love my students. I love teaching.
Hmm.
Um, for me, it's an opportunity to continue to learn and grow myself. That's my main motivation for teaching is because it gets me off my butt into the gym. On Thursdays, whenever we do JKD, we go through the lesson, and then the last half hour of class, we put the gear on and we spar.
Hmm.
We test it. And then before COVID hit, we used to have this thing that we would do at TEMA called Sparring Week every month, 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. Every program, it didn't matter whose night it was. Like the Kempo guys were Mondays and Wednesdays, my guys were Tuesdays and Thursdays. But anybody who wanted to showed up. We would spend the first half hour of the class doing warm-ups and working a couple of drills, and then we would spar the last half. So it was an opportunity to spar 4 nights a week
Hmm.
against all the different styles that were represented by the group. So you'd have the Hapkido guys and the Kempo guys and the FMA guys and the JKD guys, and we'd all get in there, put on our pads, and go to town and test what we had, against other arts. It was fantastic, and we're going to be bringing that back soon,
Okay.
real soon,
Yeah.
because and we would do that for 1 week a month, and then the other 3 weeks we'd have our regular schedule.
Right.
Every other month, in between that, we would do ground week. So 1 month would be ground week, 1 month would be sparring week.
Got
For
it.
ground week, we do this the same format. We come in, we do our warm ups, um, go over a couple of exercises, couple of drills here or there, maybe some sort of a ground drill or some sort of, and then we'd spend the last half hour of the class rolling against the different people in the different groups.
Hmm.
So it's a very open-minded, I mean, really liberal way of learning, and it's very unique in that there are not a lot of schools that I've been to where you have the opportunity to see that kind of thing happen, and
Right.
that's one of the reasons why I'm a part of this group, because
Yeah.
it is pretty unique.
Yeah. Um, how do you structure the sparring? Is it just, glove up in the protective gear and go for it?
No, no, absolutely not. My guys, I'm a big advocate of sparring. You have to pressure test everything. I mean,
Hmm.
you have to. So, just how the hell do you know if it works, right?
Hmm.
Um, with my guys, they start sparring day one. With like the Kempo guys, they'll generally wait until they hit a certain belt rank before they get them into the sparring. But if it's their first time, we always start with some form of isolation sparring.
Okay.
And I actually, well, I'm going to say stole that again, but I actually stole that again from Burton Richardson, Sifu Burton Richardson. He's a big advocate of that, and I absolutely agree with that,
Hmm.
100%. So day one, my guys are going to come in, and even if it's something as simple as like a jab only, or a straight lead only, or something like that, just a single strike, and
Right.
one guy's doing it, and the other guy, his job is to not get hit, by however he needs to do that. And it just kind of evolves from there. And then for sparring week, it's always based on rankings. And so I have to make the other students from the other, disciplines aware of who's at what level, and we try to make sure that if somebody is, like, if I've got a high level black belt in Kempo, I'm not going to put him up against one of my beginning students
Right.
and let him go all out. It's going to be
Right.
all
Yeah.
right, and they know that. So then
Mhm.
it's basically, okay, for you guys it's going to be hands only, or maybe for you guys it's going to be feet only, or maybe from you guys, or maybe for those guys it's going to be, you guys are going to slow roll, or you guys are going to flow roll, or that kind of thing. So you have to structure it to keep everybody safe. I mean, that's paramount to it, especially since, again, we're a nonprofit. So we can't. I've been in schools in the past where it was put your gear on and just go.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was when I was in Kempo. That was the way it was. Friday nights was sparring night, and there was a many a night I went to the bar with a black guy before I ever got to the bar.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, that was just the way we went back then. But again, I was a lot younger back then, and looking back, it was really not a good way to do things. So the way we structure it now, we try to make it as safe as possible.
Why do you think nobody knew better back then? Why didn't they have a better structure for it?
I think it had more to do with the instructor than it wasn't that people didn't know better. I think it was that the instructor that we had at the time he was ex-military, retired military, and very old school.
Okay.
So it was kind of like one of those, if you're going to train with him, understand it's more or less survival of the fittest. So you're going to get in there and you're just going to, he doesn't care if you get a tooth knocked out, whatever, just
Mhm.
happens, or if,
Mhm.
if you jack your knee up, or if you leave with a black eye, that's your own fault. You should have been moving,
Right.
you know.
Do you remember the first time you heard the term pressure test?
No, I have no idea where first time I heard that. I
Because
know that I know that sparring has been big since I was 12 years old in Taekwondo, because I
Yeah,
trained with an old school Korean who,
yeah,
you were going to be in tournaments, or you were not going to advance. You weren't going to get a belt up if you didn't go out there, put the gear on and go at it.
uh-huh,
So,
yeah. Because I,
but
I I always wonder about that. Like if people can remember what if there was a phrase used before that meaning the same thing.
I don't know. I'm a utility worker, so we do pressure testing on like high voltage lines, but we don't call it pressure testing. We call it high potting. But anyway, that's another story.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a term that I guess could be universal, could go across a lot of different things. But I like the term pressure testing.
Mhm.
But yeah, for me, pressure testing is sparring or rolling, or you know,
And you
as I
said
like to
you
say.
said now you use the phrase slow roll or flow roll.
Mhm.
That yeah.
Yeah, you're doing a
Right.
flow drill on the floor, basically. You're doing transition drills, like, going from position to position
Uh-huh.
without actually incorporating a lot of resistance.
Right.
Whereas slow rolling, there's some resistance, but you're moving at a slower pace. Nobody's in a
Yeah.
hurry to do anything. And then you have active rolling, where it's basically, may the best guy, may the best man win, or best woman, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Okay.
And
Let's do the politics. What role has Filipino martial arts played in your development as a Jeet Kune martial artist?
um, oh boy. Well, first off, let me clarify something. When I teach Jeet Kune, there is no blending,
Mhm.
none whatsoever. I completely separate the systems. It's not impossible to do. It can be done. I'm sure
Mhm.
you've figured that out. Um, some people seem to think that there is no way, because if you've trained other things, there's no way to separate them. You can't compartmentalize them. And I
Yeah.
never understood that, because life is basically a giant game of compartmentalization, right? I mean, you compartmentalize everything in your life.
Yeah.
Either that, or your life is chaos and you're all over the damn place. So for me, I don't teach anything from FMA in my JKD class. Conversely, when I'm teaching FMA, there is some JKD stuff that does tend to sneak in from time to time.
Now that's interesting.
especially when we're going into like the Pontoon and the empty hand stuff and that sort of thing. But
Uh-huh.
no, when I do JKD, it's JKD.
Yeah.
There's my JKD lessons are very, very simple. It's mostly just footwork, simple trapping. The compound trapping, I'll get into that with the I've only got two guys that are what I would call advanced level guys.
Mhm.
And but the other guys are basically beginner guys. So, we're still building, we're still, still learning the proper structure, how to throw a punch, how to move, how to bob and weave, how to duck, how to, all
Right.
of the all of the fundamental stuff that you have to have. There's the constant, you gotta hack away at the unessentials. We gotta have some essentials to hack away at to start with. And that's where I try to keep it. I try to keep it in that essential area and
Mhm.
then let the guys do the hacking away. They can do that once they've got a
So
pretty good grasp on things.
so that was a recent Facebook discussion,
Mm.
the whole daily decrease versus daily increase thing, right? The contention of some being that well, if you train under Inosano, then you don't understand daily decrease because you just keep adding stuff on.
Why?
Uh,
Why would you say that?
that's that. I
There
guess
are a lot of the thing about the and I try not to spend a whole lot of time on Facebook, but
well, you have a real life.
mostly because, well, yeah, I'm pretty busy, but it's mostly because of the whole politics thing. It's people on the internet have this tendency to make these sweeping generalizations when they don't really know what the hell they're talking about. And
Yeah.
it's kind of, I guess it's because of maybe the whole politicization, I can't even say it, politicization of everything that's been going on
Yeah.
in the world over the last several years. But it's like everybody feels like they got to put somebody else or something else into a particular box.
Mhm.
And I don't agree with a lot of it. I mean, for somebody to say that because I'm a Inosanto and Hartzell lineage, that what I'm teaching is not Jeet Kune Do, I would say to that person, number one, how the hell do you know? Have you ever been to my class? And that would be what I would say. Number two is come to Tallahassee.
Yeah.
First class is always free. Attend my class and then tell me if I'm teaching something that's not Jeet Kune Do. And,
Yeah.
if you feel like if you come to my class and you do that and you feel like that what I'm doing is not JKD, I welcome the criticism and any sort of um, advice that you can give me on what I need to change.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm a fairly open-minded individual. I try not to put people in boxes if I can help it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah. Um, where did that approach and that mentality and approach to life come from?
Um, I don't know. I guess I just became an adult, I suppose. No, I just, I've always felt like it's easier to just be nice
Yeah.
than it is to. Yeah, I mean, because don't get me wrong, I've been supervisor, project manager. I've done a lot of things throughout my career, and I am quite capable of being an asshole at the time, if it calls for it.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, no, I try to be fairly open-minded and fairly nice with people. I mean, I feel like if people, unless they give me a reason to be a jerk, there's just no,
Right.
there's no need to do that. But if you
Yeah.
give me a reason, I can absolutely,
Yeah.
I can be, I can be
Well,
a not.
I ask you that because I think you qualify for the role of the, I'll use the term again, proverbial like gentle giant, right? So I wondered, uh,
Well, you got
if
to remember too, Dwight. I wasn't always this big. I used to be a skinny, skinny guy. I didn't actually start getting any real size to me until I was in my mid-20s. I didn't
uh,
actually stop growing either until I was probably 25. I mean, I was 5'11" when I graduated high school. I'm 6'1" now, so I grew another 2 inches after I got out of high school. So I- it's it, yeah. I don't have to be a nice guy. I choose to be a nice guy for the most part. You know, I mean, I have my opinions about things, and generally speaking, I try to keep those to myself. I mean, if somebody asks me, sure, I'll tell you, but
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, really, I just don't feel the need for it. I mean,
yeah,
what is
yeah.
the old uh, the old joke? You know, if somebody's um I can't remember how it goes. Anyway, yeah, no, just it's easier to be nice.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just easier. And
What?
most people, that's the reason I don't get in. It's the reason I don't get in fights like I used to. Well, getting rid of my ex had a lot to do with that, but because she was a notorious shit starter. But
Uh,
but no, generally people take a look at me and they're like, "Yeah, no thanks." You know,
right. Yeah,
he's a pretty good sized guy. Probably don't want to mess with that guy. So
yeah,
so there's always that. Whereas back in the day when I was say 60, 70 pounds lighter, I was the skinny guy, and I was a lot more lippy back then too. So, but people change, they mellow out, and I just kind of mellowed as I got older.
yeah. Um, so you said earlier you had spent some time in the modern armies back in your Kempo days,
Oh
and
gosh,
then
yeah.
and then you meet Sifu Victor.
hmm
So this is your reintroduction to Filipino martial art.
Well, I mean, you have to remember back when I was doing that was one of those things where my instructor, my Kempo instructor, it was all the 12 angles, 12 blocks, and that was about all we ever really worked on. Because
Okay.
he was not very knowledgeable, but he would have like group Bruce Chu would come down. Remy would be because I actually saw Remy Presses, George Dillman, and Professor Wally J back when they were touring together back in the
Right.
day.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and Professor Remy was he was pretty impressive. And I actually went out to Seattle back in September and did the Datu Kelly Warden's Water and Steel Camp,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, there were a lot of good guys out there. That was actually a lot of fun. I enjoyed that experience tremendously.
Hmm.
So
So now what you teach in your FMA class is then a compilation of stuff.
more or less, yeah. All of the FMA, the my primary FMA comes from Sifu Vic. So
Mhm.
you've got the Innocente Lacosta, but Vic has spent a bunch of time. He's also high ranking in Dosi Paris multi style,
Okay.
but he's trained with dozens of people. I mean, because Sifu Vic is from Cebu
Right. Right.
originally. I mean, he
Right.
he immigrated here to the States back, a long time ago. But he would go home and visit family and take care of business and stuff back in the PI. And his brothers and family, a lot of them still live there, and so
Mhm.
they would, and they some of them train, and he would go there and he'd spend time with like Grandmaster Nick Elazar and some of the Watt Bag Balintawak guys, and just and anytime he would do that and come back home, he would say, "Hey, while I was there, I did some training. Let's do some of this stuff." So like
Right.
Kali Illustrissimo, and he's trained. That's the thing. I mean, like I said, for me, I wouldn't even be involved in the martial arts. I don't believe, if it wasn't for Sifu Vic. I mean, he really
Yeah.
he reminded me that I actually really do love this stuff. And
I see.
I can't give him enough credit. I mean, yeah, he's like I said, I still train with him twice a week.
Yeah. He's
I
always
train
he's al- he's
I
always
train with
been
him more if he'd let me.
right.
I
Yeah.
imagine he gets tired of me after a while. So
He's always been very under understated in his
he's
approach. You
he's
know.
very low key.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
very low key. But yeah, don't let appearances fool you. That guy knows what he's doing. He
Right.
is he is he is always trying to give credit and adulation towards like Seafood Dan and Seafood Larry and those guys, and you know having trained with Sifu Dan at the academy, once versus training with him for years and years. He's my influence.
Yeah.
So I can see the correlation and I can see the admiration from him for those guys. But for me, it's always going to be for Sifu Vic. He's my guy.
That's interesting because a guy got himself in trouble just the other day on Facebook because he said that Larry Hartzell was more. What did he say? He said that he would rather. Oh gosh, I
You're
forget
talking
the
about
exact.
you're talking about Chris Brown.
Yes.
Chris Brown, yeah, he apparently dropped a bomb on Facebook when he said he'd rather have Sifu Larry back him up than he would Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't understand the problem there at all.
I mean,
Because I understand Bruce Lee was 5'6",
yeah,
5'7", maybe 135 at his heaviest.
yeah,
Sifu Larry's built like me.
yeah.
If we're in a bar and
Right.
something breaks off, you're going to want a big guy in your corner. The size does matter.
Yeah, but even so, I think that Chris wasn't even talking necessarily about physical size. It was just the fact and the reality that, well, he trained under Larry Hartzell. He didn't train under Bruce Lee. So he's talking about the known versus the unknown.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't understand how anybody could have issue with that. It
Yeah,
makes perfect sense.
it does. It does. I mean, yeah, absolutely. If given a choice between, like you said, if you're, here's a good analogy. You're back in middle school and you're going to play a game of pickup football, or we'll just say pickup soccer or whatever. So you got, a group of kids over here and a group of kids over here, and they're going to pick teams. Well, if this guy knows most of the people there, he knows who's good and who's not. Say he's played with them in the past versus you got the new kid in school who doesn't know any of these people. Who's going to end up with the better team, right? The guy who knows all the other kids and knows who can play and who can't play, and he's picking teams versus the kid who doesn't know anybody and he's picking teams. There's a pretty good chance, going with what he knows, his team's going to come out on top. So, I mean, I totally get that. I mean, and it really does make sense. And I didn't understand why they jumped all over him about it because
I
it
didn't
didn't make
get it
a lot of
either.
sense. But then again, a lot of the political arguments that people get into on some of these forums don't make any sense either. So I kind of glance at them and I'm like, okay, and that's
Right.
enough for that, And,
Yeah, I try to tell people from time to time, like I never participated in the old forums when the internet first started and forums were a thing.
right.
I was busy running the school. I didn't have time for that nonsense.
Sure.
I didn't realize that the Facebook pages had replaced the old forums.
I got you.
You see, I thought
Sure.
you come on Facebook, you say what you say, and then other people will intelligently discuss it. I didn't know that there was another way to do it.
You're still on Yahoo Chat. Yeah, I got you.
Right? I mean, look, my two main communication emails still end in AOL.com.
Well, you've seen mine. Mine's a Yahoo address, so
Right? Yeah, so but since we did broach the political topics in Sifu Inosano's book, when he says that the JKD opened their eyes in the Kali and the Kali opened their eyes in the JKD. Do you have a personal story about that kind of revelation and recognition and realization?
Well, one of the things that I didn't realize was that that FMA had sticky hands. I had always thought of that as a Wing Chun thing, and I knew JKD did at one point have Chi Sao, and I still do Chi Sao with my guys. But I didn't realize that there was any kind of sensitivity training in FMA until I started doing that, and that was an interesting thing. I mean, the Hubad Lubad drills and all of those. when we first started doing those, I was like, what is this? And then now it's become so integral in
Right.
in the way that I teach FMA, because the flow that happens in Filipino martial arts, you want to try to achieve that as well in JKD. You know,
Hmm.
there's
Hmm.
and I didn't really understand the whole concept, when I guess God, I hate to be that guy, but the whole, be like water, it can flow or it can crash, that kind of thing, because that's cliche as all get out. But anyway, but FMA is all about flow. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is. And so it was eye-opening to me, especially coming from very hard energy systems like I had come from in the past. The judo, the Shorin-ryu karate, the Kempo, and the
Right.
Taekwondo. They're very hard styles. And I think one of the harder parts for learning both JKD and FMA for me was letting go of that and really understanding how you use energy
Yeah.
in get away from just using that hard energy and actually incorporate the softer, more flowing energy into it. And that was very eye-opening for me because I had never
Mhm.
experienced that before. I guess the unlearning part was the most difficult part for me because I didn't come into JKD like some of my students having no martial arts background. I had a pretty extensive martial arts background,
Right. Yeah.
and having to learn a new way to replace the old way, not to intertwine or mingle or blend with the old way, but to actually push the old way out and learn a new way
Hmm.
was very difficult for me. That
That's
unlearning
interesting.
process
That's
was
interesting because it's said that Bruce Lee preferred to have people who had previous experience.
maybe he did. I don't.
Hmm.
I mean, honestly, if I could have made the choice and done nothing but JKD or FMA from the start,
Yeah.
I absolutely would have done that.
Yeah.
But I was 11, 12-year-old kid. I didn't know any better. So
Yeah.
I just, and plus it wasn't available,
Right.
you know.
Why do you think why do you think he might have preferred that? He might have said that.
I think maybe he probably said that because he was looking for people who already had some of that basic stuff that he
Uh-huh.
was able to tweak. Because if you look at some of the guys that he took in, especially some of the guys that were already champions, like your Joe
Right.
Lewis's and Chuck Norris's and those guys, he didn't have to spend any time teaching those guys how to throw a sidekick or how to throw a roundhouse kick or how to throw a punch or jab or a cross or how to bob
Hmm.
and weave or anything like. They already had that walking in the door. So think of all
Hmm.
the stuff he didn't have to teach. At that point, all he's really got to do is change how they do it just a little. It's a
Yeah.
slight modification.
Hmm.
That's another thing too that I think a lot of people that a lot of people don't know about FMA that I certainly didn't know about FMA. Switching gears from JKD to FMA, but FMA, I didn't realize that FMA being a weapons-based system wasn't just about learning weapons. It was actually teaching your hands
Yeah.
to be the weapons, whether you've got something in them or not.
Right.
That was like an epiphany for me. Like, holy cow! Because I grew up on the Kung Fu theater, right? So you had one guy who had a spear, one guy who had a trident, another guy who had like a chain whip, and each
Hmm.
one was a master of that particular weapon. On JKD, or not JKD, but in FMA, doesn't matter if you got a stick, if you got a knife, if you got an axe, if you got a palm stick, if you've
Right.
got nothing in your hands,
Yeah.
the same movement translates. If it's good FMA, in my opinion, and this
Hmm.
is just my opinion, it should translate with very little modification from any instrument, whether it's, like I said, whether it's a stick, whether it's a short stick, a long stick, a stick, a dagger, a knife, a sword. You should be able to do the same movement and get the same effect, whether you've got any
Right.
weapon or no weapon at all, with very little modification.
You'd said that Did you say you have 5 people in the JKD class now?
Yeah, 5 guys in my.
Okay, and 2 of them have been around for a long time.
Yes.
Are those the same 5 in the FMA class, or is that a different group of people?
No, actually only 2 of those guys. Actually, the 2 guys that are my advanced guys actually do my FMA class as well.
Okay.
But the beginners, my guys, they're relatively new. Excuse me. No, they don't they don't do the FMA class,
Okay.
which is fine because, like I said, I don't teach FMA or anything else in my JKD class except
Right.
for JKD.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
we may drill some stuff from like boxing or something like that, but we do actually do several boxing drills, but as far as the actual content, it's
Mhm.
JKD only.
That's okay. So this is where I want to start wrapping this up, but get this from you because based on your organization, right?
Mhm.
The way your things are set up, where you teach, what are the secrets to your curriculum structure? How do you approach?
Can you read that?
Uh-huh.
What does it say?
Junfan, it says student handbook,
Yep.
right?
Inside the student handbook, I've got I did these. This was one of the things that when Sifu Vic, when I asked him if I should teach
Mm-hmm.
or if he thought it would be a good idea, he said, "Why don't you do a curriculum?" And that was the exercise, was for me to come up with a curriculum.
Right.
So ultimately, this is what I came up with, and I have one for JKD, and I've got another one. Well, it's not here, but I have one for FMA as well. I also have one for grappling, but the I came up with the curriculum, and it's funny because Sifu Vic, he's a college professor, you know. Um, the first one I brought to him, because what I did was I sat down with my notebooks, all my notes and stuff that I've been taking for all this time, and then tried to make a mess out of, tried to make something organized out of that ginormous mess. And so I just put down what I thought would be like, this would be like beginner, and I divided it up into 3 levels of beginner, 3 levels of intermediate, and 3 levels of advanced,
Okay.
and then like a last level, we'll call that phase 4 or whatever. But no, so I sat down and I just started writing and going through my stuff and trying to get everything organized. And I got it all organized, and I was very happy with what I did, very pleased with myself. And I carried it to Sifu Vic and I handed it to him, and he literally looked at it, thumbed through it, handed it right back to me, and he said, "It's too big." So I had to go
Interesting.
back to the drawing board.
Right.
So when I submitted it to him the second time, after I had cut all the stuff out that I thought was, like, I'm thinking, I've got all this stuff. I don't want to lose any of it. I got to keep all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I cut out all the stuff that I was like, well, that's kind of a repeat of this. And this is kind of a repeat of that. And I just tried to streamline it as much. And I didn't realize that it was actually a great exercise. And I didn't realize what he was doing at the time either. And so I pared it down, to what I thought maybe he'll take this. So I carried it back to him again. And this time he took it and he thumbed through it and he said, "Okay." And he hung on to it. Well, next class rolls around, he hands it back to me. Vic's a college professor. That thing had more red marks in it than you have ever seen in your life. Apparently I can't spell, I can't enunciate. My groupings are terrible. I mean, pretty much everything that you could think of. I mean, he massacred it, and I was
Right.
like, "Oh God, this is never going to work out. I'm not going to be able to do this."
Yeah.
So I went back and I took the blueprint that he gave me and kind of went through and sorted it out. And yeah, it's funny. I'm still working on this. You know, this
Interesting.
this one. I'm fairly happy with how this ended up, because this was the one where he was like, "Yeah, that'll work. That's that could work."
Okay.
And I didn't realize, I didn't really look at it as kind of a passing of the torch kind of thing. It was more of a well, if you're going to do this, don't screw it up, do it right,
Right.
kind of thing. So I was pretty grateful for that too, because I learned a lot in that process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long did it take the first version? How long did it take you to come up with the first version?
Oh gosh, I don't know, a couple of weeks at least.
Okay.
Probably longer than that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just remember I sweated it out so hard, and I was so proud of myself. And he literally looked at it for 10 seconds and just threw it right back in my face and was like, "Nope, it's too big." And I was just
Did he ever tell you why it was too big?
no, I think he was just convinced that it was too big. I mean,
Okay.
I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that. All I know is he just let the air out of my balloon, and I was just like, man, that's God, come
Yeah.
on now. So
So then the college professor corrected one with all the red marks. You still have that?
mhm, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got it. It's on the shelf. I've
Yeah.
got this will tell you how retentive I am. These are my books. The bottom shelf is all FMA. The top
Hmm.
shelf is all JKD.
Hmm.
And then all the other martial arts books that I have are in my bookshelves in the living room. I've got another probably 50, 60 books on different martial arts, everything you can think of in
Yeah.
there, along with a lot of my original notebooks and everything are all kind of filed in that area in there. So along with that original um, curriculum that he
Hmm.
marked up. Yeah,
Hmm.
I wasn't about to throw that thing away. Are you kidding? I worked my ass off for that thing.
Yeah.
So,
That's interesting, because we have we've actually gone down similar paths, right? So I mean, so there's the four methods of defense that you talked about, and I
mhm.
had never heard anybody else talk about it that way. But I had a similar experience when it came to curriculum. Um, Terry, do you know recognize the name Terry Gibson,
I recognize the name. He was Texas, right?
Oklahoma?
Oklahoma. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right. So Terry was one of the first people in our family in my experience, to actually have a written curriculum,
Uh-huh.
and he shared it with me. Right, he was quite gracious to share it with me, and then I started training the four staff members of one of Miami's top Taekwondo schools.
Hmm.
They train with me in Jun Fan and Muay Thai and Kali, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday morning, and they shared their Taekwondo curriculum with me.
Hmm. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the comparative difference,
Ah,
you know.
right.
But but they had a hugely successful school with
Sure.
this tiny curriculum.
Right.
And I remember at that time, I don't know if it was, it was a recommendation from, it might have been John Graydon, who founded National Association of Professional Martial Artists. But
Hmm.
but it was said, whatever it is you have as curriculum right now, cut it in half.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's more or less what I think Sifu Vic's goal was with me. If you look, the vast majority of these student handbooks, notes,
Hmm.
if you want to look at what you're actually supposed to learn, that's it.
Yeah.
It's one page.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what level.
Hmm.
Beginner one, beginner two, beginner three. They're all one page.
Hey, what if somebody was to say to you, okay, I want to get, a copy of your curriculum, and I want to put it up against the three Bruce Lee curricula that are in Tommy Gong's book.
They won't
I
look
want,
anything. They won't look anything like that. Nothing. Nothing like that. Because again, I'm not Bruce Lee. You
right?
know,
Yeah.
I'm relatively sure that maybe we think kind of alike, maybe. But again, he's been gone a long time. Um, I don't try to move like Bruce. I don't try to,
Hmm.
you know, I'm not Bruce Lee. I'll never be
Hmm.
Bruce Lee. You know,
Hmm.
I'm a big fat white guy. It's not going to happen, right? So basically, I try to organize it in such a way that I would be able to understand it.
Right.
You know, because that was like I said, for me, it was a huge learning process. And I don't know if it was an intentional thing on Sifu Vic's part
Yeah.
or not for me to actually figure out what I knew and what I didn't know. But that was what it did for me by coming up with a curriculum, I was able to look, okay, well, I know this. At what point did I learn this? And there are things you got to understand in my notes, it jumps all over the place.
Of course.
It's like that's the thing. It's like going to a Dan Inosanto seminar,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
You know, he's going to bounce all over the place. So
Mhm.
that's how my notes, a lot of my notes were organized like that. Well, Sifu Vic, he teaches a lot like Dan.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was a really huge adjustment for me. That was a huge adjustment. Figuring out, you know, dude, you better get with the program because we're
Mhm.
going to cover a lot of shit tonight. And if you're not paying attention, you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
You know, so I would go to class with Sifu Victor, and you know, we'd run through so much stuff in a night, and I would run home and just write notes furiously, try to remember as much stuff as I could. So yeah, my notes were all over the damn place.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'd come. Again, it's a lot like an Inosanto seminar. You've been to them long enough, and it took me several years to figure this out. But every so many years, they're kind of cyclical. You'll
Mhm.
come back, you'll cover material, and you'll be like, well, I haven't seen that in a while. Like,
Right.
what was it last time? Last time we were in Jacksonville, he did the ball and socket drill and the hinge drill and a couple of other things, you know, JKD drills. And what was crazy to me was there were a lot of guys in there were supposed to be JKD guys, had no clue what any of those drills were.
Right.
And I was like,
Yeah.
how do you not know this? You know,
Mhm. Well,
but
hey,
at the same time, I was like, well, yeah, we've done this. We did this, you know, a long time ago, and it's a constant cycle because you have to revisit things.
right.
You know, there's a lot of stuff there,
Yeah.
but you have to revisit it every so often.
Do you remember? Excuse me. You remember Neil Coliff from Coral
I
Springs?
do remember Neil. Yeah.
Excuse me. So ever since Neil passed away, once a month, my guys and I go up to Coral Springs, and I'll teach a couple classes up there.
Sure.
So we've done that. I think we've done that 3 times now, 3 months now.
Mm-hmm.
It struck me, Bo, last Saturday. I was like, how did Inosanto do this? How did he do this for decades?
Oh yeah.
Right? Because I was just like, I don't know if I'm any good at this. I don't know if these people are learning anything, right? I don't know if my approach is actually conducive. Am I helping them? I started worrying about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just once a month over 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah, it does become a lot. And, you know, it's funny. I've done the seminar thing quite a bit, but I remember in 2018, I did training with the masters, both sessions. So that's the spring session and the fall session.
Mhm.
I did Silat camp in LA at
In
the
LA.
academy.
Mhm.
While I was there, I also spent some time with Kathy Long, Tim Becker, you know, just we tried to do it. John and I went there, John Sliger and I went there, and we tried to do as much stuff as we could. I
Right.
mean, everything that we could cram in. I mean, we were at the academy for a week, so we're going to do what we can do. And so I did that. I believe Sifu Burton Richardson came to Juan's place as well. So I spent some time with him. And I'm trying to think. I also did the Jacksonville seminar. So I mean, I felt like I was gone, even though I only did like 5 or 6 different weekends out of the entire year, plus a
Right.
week in California. I seriously felt like I was gone all the time. And you know, my wife was like, another one. What are you doing? Are you seriously going to do this again? And so I can't imagine how Super Winosano does it. I mean, I really don't. And to say nothing about, you know, the elephant in the room being, you know, he's not exactly a young guy,
Mhm.
you know. So that's why, again, but those guys inspire the hell out of me. I mean, they really do.
Of
I
course.
mean, that's why every time he comes anywhere near Florida, I'm going to go see Sifu Winosano. And that's why every chance I get when Sifu Victor's teaching, I'm trying my best to be there.
Yeah.
You know, I've been with him for over a decade now, and I almost never miss a class. I try to spend as much time with him as I can because I want every bit that he's willing to give me.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Sweet. All right, man. Like I said earlier, you have a real life. Okay. So,
Real life is fixing to involve dinner, a glass of bourbon, maybe a cigar, and then I have to teach class in the morning. So
Sounds like a plan.
All right,
Thanks for
sir.
carving out some time for me, man. I appreciate
Hey,
it.
I enjoyed it. All right, we'll do it some other time. I can run my mouth anytime you want to run my mouth.
We'll do it. All right. It was nice
All
to
right.
catch up with you, man. You take care.
All right. Take care, Sifa. We'll
All
see you.
right.